beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we bow to all of you.
we bow to all of you.
We ask your blessing on our lives.
We ask your blessing on our lives.
Om
Om
Shanti.
Shanti.
Please be seated. I am in a lot of pain, unfortunately, because I had a fall a few days ago. It's worse now than it was even then. And so I'm only going to talk for a little bit, and then I will let Dharmadas and Leela take over. But I went to the hospital and there are no broken ribs. It's just that there was a divider between the shower and the bathroom, and I lost my balance and fell right on that. So it's painful. I wanted to say a few words about this occasion. Apart from Dayamata, I'm probably the only living disciple of our Guru who was on that occasion back in 1952. It was obviously a very emotional moment for all of us, and there are two kinds of approach to that occasion. One is to make that our reality. I don't think of it as my reality. I think of him as here, now. I think of his living presence today. I don't think of the occasion, which, dramatic though it was, is in the past. But when I asked him once, will you be as close to us after you are gone as you are now? He said, to those who think me near, I will be near. And I would rather talk, I'm going to sit down. I would rather talk, I would rather talk about what he came to bring, because he brought a mission of world importance. His life was a very brief life. He didn't live long, 59 years, that's not very long. I'm 78 and that's not very long. It's, I was thinking lately of taking an early retirement, and then circumstances brought me to India and to the fulfillment of a desire that I have had all my life. I remember years ago I'd been with Master only 5 months. This was in January, I think, of 1959. That's before most of you were at least in this body. There was a little girl who asked me one time, how old are you? I said, well, let's put it this way. When I was your age, you were an old woman. And he was talking about sending somebody to India. And somehow I felt that this is what he wanted for me someday. He always hinted it, and now it looks like this is the time. When I was here over 40 years ago, I had an intense desire to make him and his mission known. I noticed that in India he was not known. Books about the great saints of modern India leave him out. More and more people now, I find, have read Autobiography of a Yogi, have been very moved by it. But a surprising number of those people think of him as this fortunate young man who got to meet these great saints. You know, in his last years, he was talking to us about when he went to those saints, he went for instruction. They were in turn wanting instruction from him. They recognized him as a great master born into this body. I remember there was a sannyas ashram here outside Delhi, and when he heard I was a disciple of our guru, he said, "Oh, Bade Yogi the." He was a great yogi. And the Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram, when I met him down in Madras, said that a light like this comes into this world very rarely. Truthfully, I have after meditating on his life for all these years. I've been a disciple now for nearly 56 years. Again, I want to emphasize that's not a long time. How long we have to keep coming before we finally get out, we don't know. But I asked him one time, have I been your disciple for thousands of years? Now, why would I ask a question like that? It was because somebody had had a vision of being with him in Lemuria. Well, nobody really knows if Lemuria existed, and nobody knows if that was a true vision. But Lemuria is supposed to have been a continent in the Pacific. Whether it was or not, I'm not competent to say. But I was horrified at the thought that it would take that long. I said, Master, have I been your disciple for thousands of years? And he said, it's been a long time, that's all I'll say. It isn't as if you get out quickly. With Kriya you can. But mind you, when he said you can, that doesn't mean you will. You have to work at it. You have to put your effort into living only for God. Kriya Yoga, however, is not just the technique. And this is something that his life helped to demonstrate. You see, there are a handful of great masters who were liberated. As he told us, I was liberated many lifetimes ago. But who keep coming back to this world to sort of keep an eye on it and try to help it and bring it up. He said that, for example, Babaji was Krishna in a former incarnation. He said that Lahiri Mahashai was King Janaka. He said that he himself had been Arjuna. These great masters come again and again, not many. Most people, when they've gotten out of this world, just sort of dust their hands and say enough of that. There's a beautiful illustration of Ramakrishna that he gave of a man who, three men were going out of a village, and they were walking, and they came to a high wall, and they'd never seen that wall before. They were wondering what is behind that wall, so they thought, well, let's do what we can to get one person up there, and then he can tell us what's on the other side. So they managed, with putting somebody on their shoulders and so on, to get one person on that wall. And when this one person got up there, he clapped his hands joyfully, said, "Oh, lovely, beautiful," jumped down on the other side. And they waited, and they waited. Nobody came back. He never came back. So they thought, my goodness, now we have to know what's over there. So they made an extra effort to put something there that the one man could stand on, the other one could get onto his shoulders. And he, as soon as he reached the top of the wall and looked down on the other side, he too clapped his hands and jumped down on the other side, and that was that. So the third man said, well, I just have to know what's over there. So he found a tree and managed to lean it against the wall and climb up the tree and get to the top of the wall. And when he looked down, he saw the most beautiful land he'd ever seen. It was paradise. And he thought, oh, I would love to leave everything behind and just jump down and enjoy that. Then he thought of all the villagers. He said, if I go, nobody will know. So he jumped back and went back to tell the villagers. Well, it's not an easy job. This is what a very, very rare souls who have achieved that state of liberation come back into this world. And when they do, there are two sides to it. One is, I asked Master, he said, you don't really care. You're liberated. You know you know what the truth is. So you don't care whether you come back or stay. That's one side of it. The other side of it is that if you come back, it's like another story that he told of a frog who was living in a lake and enjoying this beautiful big lake. But he kept hearing this noise of lots of frogs on the other side of a sand dune. And he thought, maybe I should jump over there and find out what these other frogs are doing. And he got on the other side. He found a whole hundreds and hundreds of frogs all around a little lake, little well. And he jumped down. He said, my brothers, there's a big lake out there. Why are you all crowded here around this little puddle? And they were all very angry with him because they could not possibly imagine that there would be such a beautiful and large and expansive lake. And the king frog said, well, you mean your lake, ha-ha, is this big? And he jumped halfway across that puddle. And the frog from the lake said, oh, it's much bigger than that. So the king said, you mean you dare, your lake dares to be as big as this? And he jumped 3/4 of the way across that puddle. And the frog from the lake said, oh, it's more than 1,000 times what you consider your so-called lake. And so they began to persecute him. They said, impostor, how can anything be bigger than this wonderful lake of ours? And they were all set to kill him. Possibly they did. This is what the masters have to put up with. They come into this world wanting to tell us about that great lake, that ocean of cosmic consciousness. But we can't really accept that God can be as great as he really is. And so they get persecuted. And persecution seems to be a part of the game. It's all a game in the end, but it's not all that fun when you're going through it. Well, it's very important to understand that a great master's life, like that of our Guru, is not just a life that we look at and admire. He comes into this world to help us to realize who we are. He comes into this world with a mission. Now, Master's mission was also somewhat like Arjuna. He had to take the truth, he had to fight to make that truth transcendent over evil. The whole story of the Bhagavad Gita is a story, as all of you know, of a war between the forces of good and the forces of evil. And you cannot just say, I will withdraw into Samadhi, and forget that this evil exists. There is also, and it is a part of the divine play, to fight that evil. And so his role in this world was not just like Babaji, like Lahiri Mahashai, like Sri Yukteswar. One time, when he came back to India in 1935, and he wanted to help fix up the ashram, I know that his cousin, Prabhash Ghosh, told me that we were so concerned that the roof would fall in that when we were at one end of a room, we would run across for fear that the roof would fall while we were crossing. And Master wanted to put money from America into fixing up the ashram. And Sri Yukteswar said, "That's your world out there." He didn't mean that in a derogatory way. He didn't mean that Master was attached and he wasn't attached. He meant that it was Master's role to help this world to become a spiritual place. His work was finished after teaching his disciple. He said, "My world is this asana. That's all I care about." But Master's role was different. He had to be a divine warrior, like Arjuna. He had to get out there and bring these teachings to people. Now, you know, if I had my arms cut off, my legs cut off, I could issue instructions, but I couldn't say very much. I couldn't do very much. I need hands. With hands I can write books. With feet I can walk. We are his hands and we are his feet. He needs us. And this is what I want to talk about. Because he didn't just come and give a message. He came to bring a teaching which would inflame individuals to change their lives and to bring Kriya Yoga into action. You know, it's one thing to be centered in your spine and beautiful. It's also very important for our lives and for the sake of the world to take this centeredness and bring it out into the world. I remember, because I'm only now overcoming pneumonia, and I have this fall. I've had a few tests lately. And there was this doctor in the hospital who said to me, "Well, I've done pranayama and so on, but he said, I would expect you as a yogi not to have these things." Well, that's not the path. We have to have these things. We don't grow if we don't have tests. I said, however, what it does give you is the strength to do what you have to do. For example, because he was a doctor, he could understand this example. I had open heart surgery. They had to give me a new valve. I said, the next day, you know, a day after major surgery like that, your brain is very foggy from all the anesthetics. But I had a book waiting at the printer, waiting for me to finish the preface. I just didn't see how I could afford to just be spaced out while they were all waiting for this preface. So the day after the operation, I just had to, with willpower, clear away the fog and do that preface, and I did a good job on it too. The cardiologist told me that for this year you have to take complete rest. I don't think I have worked so hard in my life as I did throughout that whole year. But I think God gives us these things to help us to see that we need to bring these teachings into action. And That is Master's work. He came to show one of the most important things he came to bring was the concept of communities. I know he looked at me, first of all, after that episode when I'd been with him 5 months, and I remember him looking at me and he said, "I have plans for you." Later he began saying, "You have a great work to do." And I used to think it's my bad karma that makes me have to work when others can just meditate. But now I'm very grateful that I have been able to do what I had to do. One of the things is he very often said, he wanted people to understand. You see, when you think of people living in the world, it's very difficult to meditate and to think of God when all the people around you are thinking of the world. You end up thinking that you're doing a good thing if you help a little old lady across the street. You don't understand what it is to find perfection in yourself. And if you can have people who are sadhaks living together, what a wonderful thing it could be. He used to stress this every public lecture that he gave. He would talk about starting communities. I said to Dayamata many, many years ago, 1957, "When are we going to start these communities?" Her answer was, "Frankly, I'm not interested." Well, okay, that's her prerogative to be interested or not interested, but I was intensely interested. It began when I was 15. I wanted to start communities then. And I got all my friends enthusiastic until they found I was serious. Then they all lost interest. But he gave a talk in Beverly Hills at which he was stressing the idea of communities. And he was saying that thousands of youths must go north, south, east, west to spread this concept. And I vowed I would do it. There must have been at least 200 and probably more than that people at that party, that garden party with which he spoke. I think I'm the only one, certainly I'm the only one who's done it. I think I'm the only one who took him seriously. But I have started communities. We have 7 communities in America and Italy. About 1,000 people live in them. And the wonderful thing about those communities is that you have harmony there. You have people who live in God, and they're married, they're single, it doesn't matter. We have schools for children. We have places where people can gather to meditate, and when they work, to feel that they're working for God, and not to have co-workers and bosses who are trying to drag them down into thinking that what we're here for is just to make money. Our belief always is that God first, God last, God all the time. And whatever we do, it's for Him. And so if things don't go well, it doesn't matter. You know, recently, our center in Italy went through a surprising test. The government prosecutor in Perugia decided that we were doing criminal things. Ridiculous. But she, just on this weekend, took 9 of our principal people and put them in prison. Why? Ridiculous. Fortunately, we had many people come from America who were able to lead the programs. We had people coming from all over Italy and many from America just to show solidarity with us. But the newspapers, the television, They have printed terrible things. Like we enslave people's will, we brainwash people, thousands, literally thousands of people have telephoned the television stations and protested at this outrage. But here these people were in prison during these important days. It's an outrage. I would have gone back, but I couldn't. I got pneumonia. I guess Divine Mother didn't want me to go back. I would go back now, but I can hardly move. And so I'm still in India, but who knows if they bring it to the point where they say that, would you like a chair? Is there some? If they say we won't release these people until Swami comes back, then what choice have I? I'll have to go back. I hope I don't. But after all, I'm still by no means in good shape for travel. However, the beautiful thing is, first of all these devotees in the prison had the other prisoners all chanting God's name. They had them all very inspired by their presence there. They were by no means depressed. Rather, they were full of joy. And they released them yesterday, they released them, and photographs of their smiling faces were in themselves an inspiration. We've been through so many trials of this sort in our history. At one point, people tried by legal means to take away all my copyrights. Well, they failed. We've always won out because we have truth on our side. But it has not been easy. It has, I have to add, been a lot of fun. You don't have to worry about the tests of life. It's all a dream anyway. And whatever you have to go through, instead of thinking, oh, like this, just say, God, it's all your play. It's all your drama. It's a lot of fun. The spiritual path, when people look at the tests that people on the path have to go through, and everybody has gone through them, that's just a part of the spiritual path, and I try to win people to the spiritual path by not talking about those things. But yes, it's difficult. The joyful part about it is that it just doesn't matter. You develop a level of joy inside yourself where, sure, the world's going to fight you. The world says, wait a minute, what about us? Our values are true, your values are false. And so they try to give you a hard time. But if you inwardly feel His presence, you find that joy just never leaves you. I have to look back over a life of lots of difficulty. You know, when I was here in Delhi, I wanted so much to make Master known. And instead I was thrown out of my own organization. It was a period of great suffering for me. And yet I had to admit that underneath that pain, there was a lot of joy. God doesn't leave you. God may ask you, do you really want me? Now that's the test. When you say, I want you only, He will put you to the proof. I'm not saying this path is a bed of roses. Many people like to think that the spiritual path is God in front of you, clearing away all the thorns and brambles and obstacles. No, He's likely to throw a few extras into the way. It doesn't matter. What it helps you to understand in the end is two things. One is it's all a play anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't last long. I look back over these 78 years. I see a picture of myself when I was 4, same old fellow. Life just goes like that. But there's another thing to it too. We have to understand that our reality is ourself. There is no other reality in the universe. And the human temptation is to think, oh, other people are doing this to me. Other people are treating me like this. Or in my present situation, health is giving me these troubles. That's not the truth. The truth is that where you are, you have to decide for yourself, will you live in joy or will you live with difficulties? Spiritual people are solution conscious, not problem conscious. Spiritual people don't look at the difficulties, they look at what you can do about them. The first thing is to realize, for example, when I was thrown out, there was a lot of anger against me, only for doing what I believed deeply was what my guru wanted. I knew I was doing a good thing, but they wanted to keep things back the way they were back 50 years ago. I wanted to use his teachings and bring them out to the world. To them, my desire to make these teachings alive today was a betrayal. As they have said, we live in those days. That is their reality. I believe these teachings need to be brought out to the world. This is my reality. To them, I betrayed what he had come to bring to me, and he endorsed it by repeatedly saying, I have a great work to do. I am fulfilling what his life was all about. His life did not end on March 7th, 1952. His mission began then. This is the start. And now that I've been able to come back to India, I have to say this is the start too. What he had to bring was a mission that can transform and will transform the world. And I would like to plead with all of you to join hands with us. We have mostly Americans living in the ashram here. I hope in time that it will be far more Indians and we'll just be a small minority. I would like to start communities in this country. So many people, when I was in the hospital, this same doctor that I mentioned, he wasn't my doctor, he was one of the doctors. But he asked me a question that many Indians have posed me. Sir, how can one, meaning himself, how can one, excuse me if I pause a lot, it's a little difficult for me to speak, I find it hard to breathe. But how can I believe in yoga, I believe in meditation. How can I practice these principles when I have to earn money? I have a son in Canada. He needs money. I don't earn enough. How can I always be honest and always be truthful? How can I follow the path of Dharma when I have to live in this world? How many Indians have told me this? And if they don't talk about it so much in America, it's because they aren't that concerned with Dharma in the first place. There is an answer. That answer I have proved in my life. I have shown that no matter what happens to me, I refuse when those people treated me with hatred, and all these 40 years have done their best to destroy me. I just made up my mind, where is my reality? I am my reality. Am I happier if I am angry and hate? Or am I happier if I love, if I forgive? And I said, I choose to be happy. Therefore, I choose to love. And I have lived with that principle all these years. You know, they spent about, now you just figure it, in how many crores of rupees this would be. They spent about $50 million trying to destroy Ananda. That's not a small amount of money. Somehow we hung in there. And the beautiful thing in our community is that nobody is bitter. Everybody is joyful. Everybody is forgiving. Everybody loves. Why? Because one thing that Master taught us is, you are the center of the universe. The reality you create is your reality. Don't let other people push their realities onto you. Be true to yourself. And what do you want in life? You want bliss, you want Satchidanandam, you want joy. And with that you want love, you want peace of mind, you want all those things that people are looking for. Then don't let other people dictate that reality to you. Be joyful yourself. How they behave is their business. How you behave is your business. If you choose to be happy in your heart, no one can take that from you. And the other side is true also. If you choose to be unhappy, no one will be able to make you happy. So, in one way, it is true, and I have shown this again and again. I was a lone disciple. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anybody behind me. Mount Washington was 500 miles away or less, 400 miles away. People could easily go down there and get the, quote, true story about Kriyananda. I never talked against them. When this lawsuit came up and I had to say a few truths, our own people who had been with me for 25 years said, you never told us these things. Why would I? I'm not against them, they're my brothers and sisters in God. But I used to encourage them to go to Mount Washington and visit, knowing that they would be turned against me if possible. Fortunately, many of them had the discrimination to compare and decide we like what we see. And that's what they went by. But it was not easy to start a community. With nothing, I did it. We have 7 communities today. We have thousands of followers. As I say, we have at least about 1,000 people living in our communities in America and in Italy. Now, how did I do that? By clinging to Dharma. Yata Dharma Tata Jaya. I have lived by that principle. No matter what other people do, no matter what the temptation is to cut a few corners, no matter if it seems as if I'll fail if we don't do it, I still have clung to that. We had a forest fire at Ananda. That's one of the great dangers in living in the Sierra foothills in California, forest fires. It wiped out, it destroyed 450 acres of our 700 acres. It destroyed 21 of the 22 homes in that area. We had no insurance. Many people said we had no chance to succeed. They were sure we would fail. At that time it was found out that the cause of the fire was a faulty spark arrestor on a government vehicle, on a county vehicle. Our neighbors telephoned us excitedly, saying we can sue and get all our money back, get back everything we lost. I said, that's not Dharma. To earn money by lawsuits is a dirty way of making a living. And I wrote to the supervisors of the county, I said, I know you're worried because we are the greatest losers in this thing, but I said, we're not going to sue. We'll take our hard luck out. If we fail, we fail. But we're not, for the sake of success, going to abide by the expediency of suing, because that would not be right. Somebody came to me in the early, we'd been there a year. We very much needed money to pay for the buildings, to pay for everything. And he said, I've inherited a lot of money, and I would like your advice as to whether I should live here or go to India. I think most people would have said, well, live here, live here. I said, how much money is it? He said, $200,000. Well, back in 1969, $200,000 was a lot of money. And I meditated and I said, I think you should go to India. I would not allow, I wasn't even tempted to say live here, because I was only thinking of what would help him. And I felt that his need, in light of his karma, was to go to India. Well, this is how I have lived. I could answer that doctor, and tried to say that if you live by Dharma, you will win out. Don't worry about it. But there's another side to it too, which is how wonderful it is if you can live with other people who also believe in these principles. The world is always trying to suck you down into cutting corners in Dharma, into saying, well, if we do this, then at least we'll succeed. And maybe we won't be telling the truth. Maybe we won't be totally honest. Never mind, we'll win and then we can do a good thing. I think today in politics, it's almost impossible for a truly honorable person to become the head of a country or even a representative in the country, because you have to please too many people. And the rationale is, well, I don't like to do it, but once I'm in power, I can do good. My feeling is like what Ramakrishna said, if you peel onions, your hands smell. If you allow yourself to do the wrong thing, something will linger, and you won't be able to do the good you wanted to do. However, if we can build communities where people living together can live for God, we can build a strength. Within Ananda, it's just automatic. People are this way. Somebody said to me a few years ago, you have some wonderful people living here. I said, you know, if you met one or two people like that, you could say they're wonderful people. But when you see everybody like that, you have to say that it's what they're doing that makes them wonderful. You see, Master came to show us how to bring yoga principles into life, how to bring those truths into daily action. And when, let us say that our 1,000 people at Ananda ouch, were to decide to take this message out, and each one would live in a different city. Well, the people in the office, let's say, where he works, would say, what a nice, peaceful person. And they'd say, why are you so peaceful? And he'd say, well, I meditate. And they'd say, they don't know anything about meditation. They'd probably say, well, it's because you eat bran for breakfast. They wouldn't understand. You wouldn't have the impact if you had those people spread out, each one offering an example of peace. I mean, wherever you go, you do find some peaceful people. But you don't take it to yourself because you think they are that kind of person. When you see 1,000 people living together in these ways, you begin to think, well, this is something maybe I can do too. And so, with communities, you see a contrast with the communists, for example, who Karl Marx came up with his goofy theory, and I'm absolutely convinced. In fact, I have to say that communism was one of the things that drove me to God. Seeing the evil. I grew up in Romania, where the communists used to shoot them on sight at dark. Shoot first and ask questions later was the motto. Many of the people I knew as a child were sent to Siberia and died there. I know some of these things from first hand. Not that I went to Siberia, but I knew those people. I knew that atmosphere. And I felt there's got to be something better. That was one of the thoughts that made me think there's got to be a God. There's got to be something to look for that is high. But it was not. It was my dream at that time to start communities for this reason also. Because communism has tried to impose its values on people. And if people don't agree, well, kill them. China and Russia together have killed, it has been estimated, 100 million of their own people. Now, that's not a way to bring a new philosophy into the world. There's a much better way. Get a few people who can set that example. And other people see it and they say, oh, I'd like that. And so they copy it. And so this idea spreads not by force but by inspiration. I believe with all my heart that 100, 200 years from now, people will look back and say the most important thing happening in the world at this time was communities, where people of idealistic consciousness got together and said, let us live the right way. Let us not worry about what other people do. We can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. And it's not the time today to have just a few monks living in monasteries. It's time for those monks to come out. It's time for people everywhere to live a somewhat monastic life because a dedicated life. This principle of people living together in harmony, you've no idea what an impression it has made all over the world. These little communities, people from China, from Taiwan, from all over, write saying our lives are more worthwhile knowing that you exist. Now, like Master at that garden party when he talked this way, I plead with you, just a handful of people, but I plead with you to take seriously these words. This was one of the things he came to bring, to get people to live together in harmony. And you can, if you practice yoga, if you understand that your reality begins from you, not from other people, you can impose, in a sense, by inspiring your joy, your peace of mind. You can change the world. Here in Gurgaon, I went to one of the malls. The music, it's unbelievable. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. I think this is India, for God's sake. We hear enough of that junk in America. India has been pulling toward the West altogether in the wrong direction. Going westward is one thing. To bring those materialistic values to India is something else altogether. But there is something in India which no other country has. I remember many years ago I came here and I landed at, I think it was Palam Airport or Safdarjung, whatever the name of the airport was in those days. And it was late at night. You couldn't see anything around. The bus was full of American and Western tourists. We were all going to Connaught Circus. There was no visual impression to make me think I'm in India. But I closed my eyes and I felt this joy coming up out of the soil. This is the Yoga Bhumi, right here in northern India, more even than the south. There is a power in the soil that has been implanted here by millennia of great rishis. And so it is that I have encountered many Indians who say, but how can we bring those values back? Our job is to bring those values back. I've been incarnated in a Western body. I'm not a Westerner by heart. I'm an Indian at heart. I know it. But I have been born into an American body. I've never felt a part of our culture. I've always known this was mine. But my job, your job, if you will accept it, is to bring those values into this country, to help people to realize that we need both God and material efficiency. Now that was what my Guru came to give. Not to withdraw from the world, that's all right for a few people, but not for most people. Not to go into the world diving in with great joy, oh wonderful, money, money, money. How many Indians have discovered that having all these things, when I was here 40 years ago, nobody had television. Now everybody has it. Well, it's a blessing too, because, for instance, I'm on Sadhana Channel, and you can see me everywhere. I don't have to travel everywhere. They're good things, but what we need to do is help bring a blend of these two cultures. And I think this is why Indians feel such an attraction to America. Why not to France? Why not to Italy? Why not to England? There is a karmic bond. It goes thousands of years ago, but there is a karma between India and America. Our duty today, and the divine will today, is to unite these two cultures in a dharmic way, so that the spiritual search, and there are many millions of America, you know that 95% of Americans believe in God. 30% of those Americans who believe in God do some kind of meditation or prayer or something. They want these values. India right now has been dashing over looking for all these wonderful gadgets, and then they have them, they realize there's nothing. And so they want something else. Someday America and India, my Guru predicted, will unite to lead the world on the path of a balance between material and spiritual efficiency. This is the role of his work. And this is what I've come to India to help to accomplish. I would love to start communities where this ideal can be brought to a focus, because without a focus it just disperses in the ether. But if a few people can get together and live together, then we can set an example where that doctor at the hospital where I was will say, well, but why not? We are only at the beginning of a new age. And I'll tell you quite truthfully, this is not an easy beginning. My Guru said that there will come a time when no corner of this planet will be safe from bombs. We have great suffering ahead. We have great trials ahead. We have to be soldiers. In a way, this has been a wonderful time to be born. You know, there was a very interesting experience that I read about, not an experience, data, or whatever you want to call it. This woman hypnotist was able to regress people to their infancy. And then she asked them, can you go back before your birth? And many were able to remember. And she asked them the question, why were you born at this time? Not one talked about the suffering that this world has gone through for the last decades and will go through. Every one talked about the great blessing, the challenge, the opportunity to grow spiritually. They were born at this time because it's a wonderful time to grow spiritually. You don't grow when everything is smooth and easy. An easy life is not a victorious life. Be grateful you live today. Don't wish, oh, if it was only the other times. You probably lived then too. But you have your opportunity now to be, in a divine sense, warriors for God, Arjunas, Pandavas. We are at the time of Kurukshetra. There will be great depression, great upheaval. The real fruit of these teachings will be seen after that, but we are the beginning of it. And if we can, in our own little way, help to bring those teachings out, we can help to change the world. It will be changed anyway, because God is looking for instruments. If you aren't there, somebody else will come. I've often told the people of Ananda, if Ananda were not to succeed, somebody else would do it. But how much better if a direct disciple can do it? I am very glad and very honored that he chose me, and I am very blessed that I have been able somehow to hang in there and do what I had to do, and I have more to do, it looks like. I thought at 78 I could put my feet up on the table and relax. As I said, take an early retirement. But I am grateful and honored to be in this country and to do what I wanted to do 40 years ago, to make him and his mission known. Not with the ego of a disciple who wants his guru to be known, but with the conviction that what my guru brought is what the world needs and what India needs. I plead with you to consider this Mahasamadhi as the beginning of a life of dedication to high principles and high truths. You, specifically you, can change the world if you live these truths. Now, there were other things that he came to bring, because the wonderful thing about his teaching is that he didn't only come to do this, this, or this. It was an across-the-board thing. Look, for example, at the picture of the arts in this last century. Chaos. I remember going to a famous symphony. I thought, famous? What is music if not melody, rhythm, harmony? What do you do with a piece of music that doesn't have any of those? The arts today have been expressive of the complete confusion in human nature. Architecture. Well, I'm very pleased to see some of the architecture here in India today. But when I first saw Chandigarh, I thought, what a disaster. Le Corbusier brought France to India. That's not India. All these straight corners, everything, that's not India. India's round. India is a mixture of feminine and masculine. Architecture needs to express it too. All the arts need to. God has given me the grace to be able to write music that inspires. And with good fortune, this music has won prizes. It has been played on international airlines. It has changed people's lives. I have said to people, what brought you to Ananda? And many people have said it was the music. I remember a few years ago, a group of Americans came over to Italy and sang an oratorio that I wrote in 6 cities, and they had standing ovations in every city. But the most touching moment for me was in Assisi after a concert. A man came to me, he said, he spoke French. Well, I speak French, so I understood him. He said, I don't know any Italian, I don't know any English, but I understood every word. He felt it in his heart. This kind of change Master came to bring, to show how to bring heart to the world. He came to teach how to bring a new system to education, which today is atheistic, and how to uplift people. Now in Ranchi today, they made the mistake, and I knew it was a mistake at the very beginning. They said, if we put up so much money, the government will put up the same amount of money, we'll be able to build much faster. I said, okay. But if you let the government give you 1 paisa, they will own you. And so it has happened. They can no longer teach the spiritual teachings there. They have to teach them in private, outside of the classroom. Swami Shantananda said to me in 1978, we hope someday to bring back Master's principles. Well, we have schools in America. They're not government owned, they're private schools. Like some of the schools here today in India. We need to teach children a balanced way of life so that they can have not only the necessary knowledge to function efficiently in this world, but also have dignity and spirituality. We have schools in America where sometimes the children leave, maybe because their parents leave, maybe because they're going to higher education, maybe because they sort of think, well, it would be nice to see what other children are doing too. In just about every case, our children quickly rise to the top of the social ladder, of the scholastic ladder. They get the best marks, they become leaders in the school. It is not a truth to imagine that if you learn spiritual truths, it will make you inefficient in the world. They show by their example that they are better students than those students who have been trained in worldly ways. There is no justification for an education that says we must first teach them the science and then maybe later on they can think about God. Bring the two together and you've got more efficiency even in the world. These spiritual principles are essential for a proper worldly life also. It isn't as if because you have to live a spiritual life, therefore you don't succeed in the world. You can be much more successful. In countless ways, Master came to bring this teaching to the world. That when you have God, It doesn't make you inept. It doesn't keep you from being able to function. Rather, you become more efficient, more dynamic, more competent, and above everything else, more happy. This is what I have seen again and again among Indians who have come to America. They're not happy. They have much more money. They have many more things. Where is happiness? We need a blend of these two cultures. And I believe that that is what the future will bring. We are the way showers. I'm on my way out. I don't think I'm going to live many more years. And I'm eager to get out. Never mind. No. You're going to find that you have a role to play to show the balance between the two. And so it is that in these communities, Master didn't come and we haven't come to show you how to withdraw from the world and to say it's all Maya and forget it and go to a cave. Well, I lived in a cave in the Himalayas for a while. Loved it. Somebody, after I was there, because he was attracted to me, he wanted to go and meditate where I had meditated. And he was sitting there and he heard a little noise and he opened his eyes and there was a cobra at the back of the cave, all raised like this. He ran for his life. So I was living in that cave with a cobra. I didn't know it. But that's not the solution, finally. Many people have told me, well, I have to work and support my family and raise my kids and everything. And then in old age, I will go to the Himalayas. Well, by then your habits are formed. You're not going to live well in the Himalayas. We've got to bring the Himalayas down to the plains. We've got to show how those Himalayas, which can inspire from a distance, can also inspire in our own homes. This was the message that the Masters sent to the world through our Guru. So again, I plead with you. Understand that Kriya Yoga needs to be put into action. We need to meditate. We need to feel the divine joy within. We need to bring that divine joy outwardly. And the most sure way of doing it is if a few people who believe in these values will band together and live together, grow their own food, build their own buildings, educate their own children. I have done it. Ananda now is 36 years old. That's long enough to prove something. We can do it here. I know that that's what Master wants to do through me. I know that that's what I want you all to help me to do. You know, there's the story of Narada. Narada had a vision of Vishnu, and he saw through the nature of Maya. And he said, Lord, I want only you. But Vishnu said, Narada, I would like to give you a boon. And Narada says, yes, this delusion, it's so obvious. He said, I would like to understand the power of Maya that keeps people here in this delusion. Vishnu said, come with me. They went for a walk. They were crossing a desert. In the distance, they saw a village. Vishnu said, Narada, I'm very thirsty. Could you go to that village and get me a glass of water? Narada said, yes, instantly, Lord. He went to the village, knocked on the first door, and a beautiful young woman opened the door. And somehow she seemed anciently familiar to him. And he completely forgot about Vishnu. And he saw this beautiful woman and he fell in love with her. And he was accepted into the family. And the family was so happy to have such a good man for a son. And he married the girl and he settled down in the village. And he had a business. And he thrived in this business and he had a child. And then they had another child. And then they had a third child. And this was 12 years later, when suddenly a flash flood came and wiped away the entire village, destroyed everything. Everything the man had worked Narada had worked all these years to develop, everything was gone in a few moments. And he was able, by sheer willpower, to walk through these swirling waters, seeking safety. And he had one child in one hand, one child in the other hand, one child, the little baby on his shoulder, his wife stumbling along beside them. And at a certain point he lost his footing. And in trying to catch his footing, he let go of one child, and the child was swept away in the water. And the other child also was swept away, but because he stumbled, his little baby also fell and was taken away by the flood. And his wife also. And he thought, what is there? He lost hope and he just lost consciousness. And he assumed he would drown. And then, after who knows how long, he opened his eyes and he saw these swirling waters all around him. It looked like waters, a brown substance. And he felt so badly. And he was thinking, all that I worked for has gone. When he heard a voice. Narada? Thought, I know that voice. Narada? And he looked up. He saw Vishnu there. Vishnu said, Narada, what happened? And he looked around him. He saw it was all sand. It wasn't muddy water. And Vishnu said, Narada, what happened? Half an hour ago I sent you for a glass of water. I find you sleeping in the sand? That is what this Maya is. It's all a dream. It has no substance. Don't take it seriously. It means nothing. It's all a dream. And this body which seems so subtle, it'll be ashes someday. Realize who you are and what you are and why you are. You were born for Satchidanandam. You were born to know who you are in God. Don't waste another lifetime. You've been wasting 1,000, 1,000,000 of them. In the Rubaiyat of Omakayam, there's a passage that says that many who come into this world at the beginning of the day of Brahma are still wandering in delusion when this day of Brahma ends. How long is the day of Brahma? Then must you go on and on? And each time you think, well, I will do it this time. I will find it that time. Each time. There's a million ways of falling into delusion all over again. It isn't worth it. And you know one reason why it isn't worth it? Because the basis of this entire delusion is Dvaita, duality. That means that for every minus there's a plus, and for every plus there's a minus. It means that no matter how hard you work, thinking, now, finally I'll get it, finally I'll be successful, finally I'll have everything I want, finally I'll reach the top of my little tiny mud heap. And do you know that the grim reality, although it's a laughable reality if you think about it, is that all those efforts, all those successes, all those failures, all those victories and disappointments, they have to, mathematically they have to, end in zero. It has to cancel itself out. There's no other choice. The waves, when they rise, don't lift the level of the ocean. The wave can rise because there's a corresponding depression. Always the ocean level remains the same. Always, whatever plus you find in life, it will have to be cancelled out. You can never reach the point where you say, finally, I have what I was seeking. The ground will be swept out from under you. It has to be. This is the simple law of life. And thus it is that people, over much seeking, much striving, and many disappointments, finally, as Master put it, they reach an understanding of the anguishing monotony of this world. The same old stuff, it's not worth it. I plead with you as he pleaded with you. And during his last moments, on that occasion when he was speaking on March 7th, 1952, he was saying, I plead with you. Bring the best of the East and West together and live in a better way so that you can know what life is all about. Life is God, and you are God. Bliss is what you really are, and everything else is just wasting time. Seek God. You will know what it's all about then, and until then you will not. So, God bless you. I'm not going to stay, but I'm happy to be here.